Hello and welcome to The Top Story, a podcast with the headlines of the day from our correspondents around the world. I'm Qi Zhi. Coming up in this edition, South Korean investigators have arrested impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol. Hamas says negotiations on a ceasefire in Gaza have reached the final stage. And firefighters are holding the line against the wildfires in Los Angeles. We begin in Asia. Investigators in South Korea have arrested impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol at his home in central Seoul. Yoon's arrest is the first ever for a sitting South Korean president. His supporters have gathered to protest the arrest. Shin-han has more from Seoul.
I'm standing here in front of the residence of the South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol, and it's hard to imagine this was a scene where thousands of people had gathered, thousands of law enforcement had gathered, investigators had congregated here to attempt to execute that warrant. Investigators had to go up this hill from this main street and bypass three sort of vehicle barriers to get to that point. Luckily, there weren't any major clashes that occurred. Now that the president is over at the Corruption Investigation Office, where he is facing questioning on charges of being the mastermind of an insurrection attempt, allegedly, the scene here is now back to normal. This is a residential area for the most part. It is located in the central part of the city, but police presence here has dissipated almost instantly. Many of the supporters and, of course, the people that are against President Yoon have now moved over to the city of Gwacheon, where the focus will be over there to see and determine where President Yoon's fate lies.
That's Shin-han in Seoul. During the investigation later on Wednesday, investigators said the president refused to make any statements and declined to allow the questioning process to be recorded or videotaped. The CIO, the anti-corruption agency, is reportedly negotiating with the presidential security service on whether to transfer Yoon to the Seoul Detention Center for custody. It is also considering applying for a detention warrant from the Seoul Western District Court, which issued the arrest warrant against Yoon. The detention period could be extended to a maximum of 20 days if the application is approved. The CIO plans to transfer Yoon to the prosecution after 10 days of detention. Turning to China, disaster relief efforts are underway in Xizang a week after a 6.8 magnitude earthquake jolted the southwestern Chinese region, also known as Tibet. Workers and soldiers continue to support displaced residents at temporary resettlement sites in Dingri County, the quake's epicenter. Zhao Chengchen was there.
I'm currently at Cuo'ang Village, Quluo Township of Dingri County. We are about 10 kilometers away from the epicenter of Changsuo town. So it is now the second week after the earthquake struck, and resettlement work are still underway. The tents have been set up for the firefighters of the Xizang Forest Firefighting Special Operation Unit. This is pretty much like a headquarters here for the firefighters right outside the Cuo'ang Village. So Cuo'ang Village is one of the largest villages of the 9 villages around Quluo town, with about 110 households. Here, firefighters have been working around the clock to help assist the villagers with the setup of mobile houses, conduct inspections of safety and hazards, and also providing hot meals, as well as clearing debris. The instructor of the operation unit told me that they have completed the retrieval of the most valuable belongings of the villagers, and they're now primarily helping the villagers with moving around supplies as they are moving into the mobile houses, the prefabricated houses set up at the relocation sites nearby. Throughout the day, the firefighters are dispatched into 9 villages to inspect the walls and houses and determine whether the walls need to be reinforced or dismantled, but under the agreement of the previously occupied residents. Meanwhile, they also disseminate knowledge of earthquake prevention and mitigation to the villages. The instructor told me that they will continue to provide resettlement work here to support the villagers.
That was Zhao Chengchen in Xizang. Moving on to the Middle East. Hamas says negotiations on the ceasefire in Gaza have reached the final stage. Negotiators in Doha are working to finalize the deal. Israeli officials say Hamas is expected to release 33 hostages during the first phase of the agreement in exchange for an Israeli troop withdrawal from much of Gaza. There have been mixed reactions from Israel on the deal. More details from Jonathan Regev.
Far from being a unanimous thing, there's a lot of criticism on this deal on two separate issues. One is the fact that many people were saying that they want all of the hostages to be brought back at once, together. This is not the case. There's a first stage in which 33 hostages will be brought back. According to what Israeli officials are saying, the majority of them are alive, but not all of them. That means that 65 hostages, some of them alive, will remain behind for a second stage. There is a certain framework for a second stage, but it's far from being finalized. Are we certain that the second stage will eventually happen? Absolutely not. Do we have a certain framework of time for that second stage? No. Therefore, criticism on that issue. On the other hand, there's so much expectation for a deal and the hope of seeing 33 hostages, most of them alive, and those in difficult situation, the elderly, the women, the children. A lot of expectation to see those people. And of course, there's no other way for Israel to do this but to pay a very expensive price. First and foremost, withdrawing forces not from the entire Gaza Strip, but from larger portions of the Gaza Strip. Israeli forces will remain in certain buffer zones within Gaza, but will leave most of the populated areas. And, of course, releasing many Palestinian prisoners, among them those convicted for life sentences for murder. Yes, it is true that they will be deported. They will not be allowed to go back to the West Bank. They will be deported either to Gaza or to a third country, being Qatar or Turkey. But that is something that is not very easy for Israel to accept. On the other hand, there is a clear understanding that if you want to bring 98 hostages back, you have to pay a very expensive price. All in all, the reception is good. All in all, there's great expectation for this to happen. One final thing that is important to note, yes, it seems as if this is very close, but until this is finalized, then everybody here in Israel understands that things can go wrong, things can be derailed. We have seen optimistic signs in the past, and then eventually things did not happen. Therefore, until this deal is done, finalized, signed, and even furthermore, until hostages actually come back to Israeli territory, there will always be some skepticism in the Israeli side whether this will eventually happen or not.
That was Jonathan Regev reporting. Turning to North America, firefighters are holding the line against the wildfires in Los Angeles. Over 8,000 firefighters are trying to stop the flames from spreading as dry desert wind threatens to fan the inferno. It is Tianshan reports.
This has been exactly 1 week now since we suddenly woke up in Los Angeles and the entire city was surrounded by 6 or so fires. I should say the biggest fire, the Palisades fire, is still only at about 17%, so there's still much work to do on the ground. And the Eaton fire, the second biggest fire in the Altadena, Pasadena area, remains at around 35% containment. A little better perhaps, but still, both of them indicate that we are by no means out of the woods. And the worst problem we're facing right now is the fact that those infamous Santa Ana winds, the powerful wind gusts that reach up to more than 100 kilometers per hour, the ones that really spread these fires in the very first place are now expected to come back. So still large areas, roughly 88,000 people remain evacuated in the Brentwood area, immediately threatened by the Palisades fire. And in the meantime, more than 5,000 homes have been destroyed just in the Eaton fire alone. Now, we visited that location earlier, and we spoke to some of the families who are in desperate need for basic necessities and resources, as only some people who are lucky enough to afford hotel rooms have found some temporary housing. Other people are relying on their friends and families to perhaps stay with them. But many people are also just spending their time in the shelters for now, because there is a lot of uncertainty moving forward.
That was Edith Tianzhan on the raging wildfires in LA. Finally, in Africa, a 2-day underground rescue operation continues for miners at an illegal gold mine in South Africa. Julie Shire has more.
Community members gathered at the derelict Stilfontein mine in the northwest province in the hope of seeing their loved ones once again. Emergency workers have been toiling away in the scorching heat since Monday to rescue illegal miners known as zamazamas who have been stuck underground since November without vital supplies.
I have hope that our people are going to come out, our brothers, our friends. You understand? It feels good because we know a lot of guys here. They are our brothers, they are friends, they have kids. So we are trying our best we can to help them out. Because it will hurt when I see my friend's kid tomorrow, they are running around the street, dad is not around.
By late afternoon on Tuesday, over 80 miners were rescued and detained. Several bodies were also recovered.
Some of them are as young as 14, at least, according to my estimation. They are just skin and bones. Very, very sad. Very, very sad to look at them. So we brought some soft porridge and maheu. We brought some water. They couldn't wait because they've not been drinking water for a long time now. And they are hungry. They are weak.
Operations are expected to continue well into the night and over the coming days. Community organizations who have been appealing to authorities to help the miners believe the help has come too late for many who didn't survive the ordeal.
And the consequences of it are devastating in the enormous loss of life that could have been avoided. It is just a callousness of the political establishment, their indifference to the suffering, particularly of the poor black working class.
People are really disturbed, and people are saying we shouldn't have arrived to this point where we are just taking dead bodies. This could have been arranged long time ago.
South Africa has a bigger problem on its hands. Many in this and other communities turn to a life of illegal mining to escape poverty and unemployment. Stilfontein is just one of 6,000 abandoned shafts mined by zamazamas.
That was Julie Shire reporting. 2 Somali fishermen rescued by a Chinese ship near the Seychelles have arrived back home. The fishermen had been adrift for about 25 days. The Somali government has thanked all those involved in the rescue operation. Mohammed Kahir has more from Mogadishu.
These 2 Somali fishermen safely arrived back home in Mogadishu following their rescue by a Chinese ship after more than 25 days at the sea. Their boat developed a mechanical problem while on fishing mission in the Indian Ocean off coast of the Somalia, and several attempts to seek assistance from other vessels passing by were not successful.
While we were still in Somali territorial waters, we encountered about 5 ships and sought their help, but this was unsuccessful. After 25 days in the ocean, about 1,058 miles to the Kenyan border, we encountered another ship and raised our white flag, which is when we got rescued. They took our details, including the registration of our boat, and provided much help.
That vessel that rescued them was a Chinese ship. The 2 fishermen were later taken to China for specialized treatment and assistance. While in China, they were provided with all necessary help, including medical assistance, before they were safely transported back home by air.
We appreciate the Chinese vessel for the rescue. They deserve an award from our side, the captain and his Filipino crew, as well as the doctors and even the cooks for the hospitality.
Somali government officials say the rescue mission is a great example of human companionship and support beyond international borders during times of crisis.
We are very grateful for the ship and the vessel that rescued them, that provided them with medical assistance and essential services in order to resuscitate them when they were at the brink of death. And this is something very significant. They supported them however they could, and both their families and us as the Somali government are very, very grateful for that. This is a very beautiful story of human companionship and human support that doesn't know nationalities, doesn't know borders. People needed saving, and then they were helped, and then they were supported.
Dozens of Somali fishermen have lost their lives in the Indian Ocean in recent years. in incidents following strong winds. But for the families of Sharmarke and Ibrahim, they are grateful that the efforts of the crew of the Chinese vessel helped them save the lives of their loved ones. It's a happy ending that will renew their faith in the goodness of humanity during times of adversity.
That is Mohammed Kahir in Mogadishu. Now, recapping the headlines before we go, South Korean investigators have arrested impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol. Hamas says negotiations on the ceasefire in Gaza have reached the final stage. And firefighters are holding the line against the wildfires in Los Angeles. And that's it for this edition of The Top Story, a podcast that brings you world headlines every weekday. For more news in politics, business, sports and culture, you can subscribe to the Beijing Hour, a one-hour podcast news magazine program. We would welcome and appreciate all ratings and reviews. I'm Qi Zhi. Thank you for listening.